Nuss. My sister sent me a voice memo instead of a text. 3 minutes and 42 seconds. I almost didn't listen. I was standing in my kitchen in Portland, still in my work clothes, pouring leftover coffee I already knew was bad for me. I pressed play anyway. The first 90 seconds were fine. Background noise, her clearing her throat, the familiar sound of her apartment, the way only people who grew up in the same house can recognize another person's silence. Then she said it. I've been thinking, and honestly, Derek and I both feel like it would just be better energy-wise if you didn't come to the opening. You know how you get. We just want it to be a good night. You know how you get. I stood there with cold coffee going warm in my hand and replayed that sentence 4 times. Not because I didn't understand it, because I understood it completely and needed a moment to decide what to do with that understanding. What I didn't tell her, what she clearly had not thought about, was that her commercial kitchen lease was sitting in a folder on my laptop under my name. Just my name. Because 3 months ago, when the landlord ran her credit and came back with a hard no, she had called me crying at 11 at night, and I had said yes. The way I always said yes. But for the first time in my life, I was going to say something else. My name is Nora, and I have been the responsible one since I was 9 years old. I didn't choose it. It was assigned the way you assign a task to the person who never complains, quietly, without discussion, as if it were simply the natural order of things. Growing up in Boise, my sister and I were 2 years apart and about 40 years different in how the world treated us. She was the creative one. That's what my mother always said, the word creative landing soft and warm, like a protection. My sister drew things, made things, felt things loudly and publicly, and when it overwhelmed her, someone was always there to redirect, soothe, catch. Usually me. Sometimes my mother. Never my father, who worked long hours at a shipping company and treated emotional conversations the way most people treat dentist appointments. Necessary sometimes, but best avoided. I was the quiet one, the steady one, the one who did her homework without being asked, packed her own lunch, called the insurance company when my mother couldn't face another hold queue. By the time I was in high school, I had learned that needing something was a kind of inconvenience. I couldn't afford to impose on people already busy managing my sister's needs. Don't misread that. My sister is not a bad person. She is genuinely gifted. In the kitchen especially. By the time she was 19, she could taste a dish once and reconstruct it from memory. She felt food the way musicians feel melody. That part was always real. What was also real was that she had never once been asked to do something difficult without a safety net already in place. So when she came to me at 22, 2 years out of high school and stuck in a waitressing job she hated and said she wanted to go to culinary school, really go, a proper program, the kind with externships and professional kitchens and a name that meant something, I already knew what the conversation was actually asking for. She wasn't asking for advice. She wasn't asking for encouragement. She was asking if I would pay for it. She didn't say that directly. She talked about tuition costs. About how our parents couldn't help, about how student loans would bury her before she ever got started. She talked about her dream. She said my name in that particular way she had, the way that turned it into both a question and an answer at the same time. I was 24. I had a job at a logistics company. I wasn't rich, but I'd been saving the way cautious people save, quietly, consistently, without anything exciting to spend it on, and I had enough to start and enough patience to keep contributing while she was in school. I said yes. Over the next 3 years, I paid her tuition in installments. I covered her housing when her roommate situation fell apart sophomore year. I bought her knife set, the good one she had spent 6 months researching, as a graduation gift. When she did her externship in Seattle and her car broke down midway through, I wired her enough to fix it and get through the last 2 weeks. By the time she walked across that stage, I had put just over $87,000 into her education and the small disasters that surrounded it. I was not keeping score. I want to be clear about that. I wasn't tracking it on a spreadsheet or waiting for repayment. I did it because I believed in her. I did it because I had watched her come alive in a professional kitchen the one time I visited during her externship, and it was the most purposeful I'd ever seen her look. I also did it, if I'm being honest, because some part of me hoped it would finally close the distance that had always existed between us. I thought maybe this was how I showed her she mattered, and maybe she'd finally see that I did too. She graduated. She got a position at a mid-range restaurant in Portland and relocated. A year later, she left to try something on her own. That was when she called me about the pop-up. The idea was straightforward. She had built up enough industry contacts that she could fill a room. She had the concept. A 6-week rotating dinner series, small tables, set menu, the kind of intimate format that food writers love to cover. What she needed was space. Specifically, a licensed commercial kitchen she could rent monthly while she built momentum. She found the place. Old building near the east side, good bones, solid equipment, reasonable rent for Portland. The landlord met with her, liked her, and then ran her credit. She called me that night, voice tight, embarrassed in the particular way she got when something she assumed would work out hadn't. The landlord needed a cosigner. Her credit score was too low. Student loans and partial deferment, a couple of late payments from the year after graduation when things were tight. He wasn't being difficult. It was just policy. I wouldn't ask, she said, but I've already told people about this. I've already started talking to vendors. If I lose this space, I don't know when I'll find another one at this price. I asked her to send me the lease. I read it that night. The rent was reasonable. The term was 6 months with an option to renew. The liability clauses were standard. I called my own landlord contact the next day to get a second opinion. He said it looked clean. I signed it. My name went on that lease as the primary leaseholder. Her name was listed as authorized occupant. I paid the security deposit, first and last month's rent, out of my own account. $3,400. I didn't think much about it at the time. It was a step. I was helping her take a step. What I didn't fully register then was that I had just become the only person on that document with any legal standing. The months leading up to the opening, I noticed a shift. Small things at first, the kind you explain away because you don't want to seem paranoid or needy. She stopped sending me menu drafts. For the first 3 weeks after signing the lease, she had texted me photos of every dish, plating experiments, sauce tests, little videos of herself tasting things and frowning or grinning. Then one day, it just stopped. I thought she had gotten busy. I offered to help with the event logistics. I had experience with that through work, vendor coordination, timelines, day of checklists. She said she had it covered. When I asked if I could review what she had, she sent me a 2-line response about not wanting too many opinions stressing her out. Her boyfriend started appearing in conversations in a new way. He had always been around. They had been together about a year. Pleasant enough, worked in marketing. But suddenly, he was weighing in on things he had never weighed in on before. She mentioned him approving the logo. He had connected her with a food writer he knew. He had suggested the ticket pricing. Every other sentence seemed to begin with, "Derek thinks," or "Derek said." I met him once more during this period, a casual dinner my mother arranged when she visited Portland. He was charming the way people in marketing are often charming. Fluid and attentive, good at making you feel like the most interesting person in the room until he turned that attention elsewhere. At one point, I mentioned that I had signed the kitchen lease, just in passing, context for something we were discussing. He glanced at my sister in a way that lasted less than a second. She didn't look back. I didn't think much of it then. I do now. 2 weeks before the opening, the invitation list went out. I found out about it not from my sister, but from my mother, who called to say she was flying in and wasn't it exciting. "She didn't send me one," I said. My mother paused. "I'm sure it's just an oversight." I texted my sister, asked if she had sent the invitations yet and whether I should expect mine by email or paper. She read it. I could see the read receipt. She didn't respond for 6 hours. When she finally replied, she asked if we could talk. I said of course and called immediately. She didn't pick up. She texted back, "Not tonight, tomorrow." Tomorrow came and went. The next day I sent one more message, "Just let me know either way." That evening, she sent the voice memo. I sat with it for a long time. You know how you get. I had been turning that phrase over since the moment I heard it, looking for the version of myself it was describing, the version that was too much, too direct, too something. I thought about every interaction we'd had over the past 3 months. I thought about the menu draft she stopped sending. The invitation that never came. Derek's half-second glance across the dinner table. I opened my laptop. The lease was in a folder I had organized when I signed it. One of those habits that seems excessive until it isn't. I read through it again. Slowly this time, the way you read something when you're looking for a specific thing rather than just absorbing it. Primary leaseholder, Nora. Termination rights, reserved exclusively for the primary leaseholder, with 30 days written notice prior to any renewal period. The current term ended in 11 days. The renewal window, the period during which either party had to notify the other of their intent, had opened 4 days ago. I read that twice. Then I sat back and thought about what I actually wanted to do. I want to be careful here, because what happened next has been described by my family as impulsive, vindictive, unstable. Those words say more about the people using them than about me. What I did was not impulsive. I sat at my kitchen table for 2 hours. I made tea. I didn't drink. I walked to the window and looked at the street below and thought about my sister's face at her graduation, about the knife set still in its case the day I gave it to her, about the externship emergency and the wire transfer and $87,000 and 3 years of believing I was helping someone become who they were supposed to be. I thought about you know how you get and better energy-wise, and we just want it to be a good night. We, not I, we. Meaning her and Derek had discussed this, meaning someone had sat in a room and made a deliberate decision to exclude the person who had paid for nearly everything she had. I opened a new email to the landlord. I introduced myself as the primary leaseholder on record. I informed him that I would not be exercising the renewal option. I noted that this was within the notification window specified in the lease and that I was happy to provide written confirmation if required. I thanked him for his time. Both replies arrived within 2 hours. Formal, professional, completely uncomplicated. They thanked me for the timely notice and confirmed that the tenancy would conclude at the end of the current term. 11 days from now, my sister would not have a kitchen. I did not sleep well that night, not because I doubted myself, because doing something significant, even something you know is right, still costs something. The first sign that things had landed was a text from my mother the following morning that said, "Call me right now." I did not call her. By noon, I had 7 missed calls. 3 from my mother, 2 from my sister, 2 from a number I didn't recognize that I assumed was Derek, because who else would be escalating on her behalf by midday? At 2 in the afternoon, my sister sent a text that read, "The landlord says you didn't renew. Is this some kind of mistake?" I didn't respond. At 4, my mother sent a longer message. It started with my full name, always a bad sign, and moved quickly into words like betrayal and selfish, and how could you do this when she has worked so hard? There was a line near the end that said, "You are the steady one, you know how to handle things. I don't understand why you're handling it like this." The steady one. There it was. The same architecture, just different words. You are the strong one. You are the steady one. You are the strong one. You are the steady one. The sentence that was never actually a compliment. It was a mechanism, a way of making my compliance feel like a personality trait rather than something being extracted from me. I turned my phone face down on my desk and finished the report I was supposed to have sent an hour ago. She came to my door that night at 8:15. I heard the knock and knew it was her before I checked. There was a specific rhythm she had always used, 2 quick, 1 slow from when we were kids, and she would come to my room after a nightmare and not want to announce it too loudly. I opened the door. She looked like she had been crying for hours and had run out and was now operating somewhere beyond crying, in that flat, quiet place where everything has been exhausted except the thing you came to say. Her jacket was wrong for the weather. Her hair wasn't done. She was holding her phone with both hands the way people hold things when they need something to hold. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped back. She came in and sat on the edge of the armchair nearest the door, which is what she always did when she came to me with something difficult, like she needed to preserve the option to leave quickly. Neither of us said anything for a moment. "The landlord confirmed it," she said finally. "You didn't renew?" "I didn't," I said. She looked up. "Why?" I kept my voice level. "You sent me a voice memo telling me not to come to your opening. I paid for your culinary education, your housing, your knife set, your emergency car repair, and your security deposit. You told me my energy wasn't right for your good night." She opened her mouth. I waited. It wasn't supposed to come out like that. Derek thought it would be less awkward if... "Derek," I said. She stopped. "Derek has never given me anything," I said. "Derek has never answered a call at 11 at night. Derek did not sign that lease." She looked down at the phone in her hands. "You could have just talked to me. You didn't have to do this." "I called you," I said. "You didn't pick up." "I texted you." "You sent me a voice memo 3 days later." "I was stressed." "You have been stressed before. I have always shown up anyway." Silence. "The opening is in 9 days. The tickets are sold. I have vendors coming." Her voice was starting to splinter at the edges. "Nora, please, I need you to reverse it." The landlord said, "Only you can authorize the continuation." "I know." "So you'll do it?" "No." The word landed in the room like something dropped from a height. She stared at me. "I don't understand you," she said, and her voice had shifted, not to anger yet, but to something testing the edges of it. "This is my career. This is everything I've worked for." "It is," I said, "and I helped build it." "And you still decided I didn't deserve a seat at the table." The door knocked again. 3 sharp, impatient raps. My sister's eyes went to the door and then back to me with a look I can only describe as apologetic and helpless at the same time. I crossed to the door and opened it. My mother came in first, coat still on, purse still over her shoulder, which meant she had driven straight here without stopping. Behind her, filling the doorway in a way that was technically casual but functionally deliberate, was Derek. I had not invited Derek. My mother looked at me with the expression she reserved for things she considered beneath all of us. "Nora," she said. "What is happening?" "I'm having a conversation with my sister," I said. "You've effectively torpedoed her business." "I chose not to renew a lease that was in my name, that you signed for her." "Yes, because the landlord wouldn't approve her on her own, which she asked me to solve." "Which I did. And then she asked me not to attend the event I made possible." I kept my voice entirely even. "So I solved that problem too." My mother turned to look at my sister as if checking for backup. My sister was staring at the floor. Derek stepped forward. He had his hands in his pockets, that easy posture people adopt when they want to seem reasonable while being unreasonable. "Look," he said, "I think we all just need to take a breath here. The disinvite was maybe not handled the best way, and I take some responsibility for that." He paused on that sentence like it cost him something meaningful. But ending her entire launch over a miscommunication seems disproportionate. I looked at him. "You take some responsibility for what?" He met my eyes. "For how the message was delivered, not for the decision." A beat. "She has the right to have the space she needs at her own event." "She does," I said. "And I have the right to make decisions about a lease in my name." "That's technically true," he said, with the tone of someone who finds technicalities distasteful when they don't favor him, "but there's also just basic decency." I funded $87,000 of her culinary education. I said, "I have been the emergency contact, the wire transfer, the co-signer, and the safety net for the better part of a decade. I showed up every single time without being asked twice. And the first time something significant was happening, the first time there was a room full of people who were going to see what that investment became, I was told not to come, by voice memo." I paused. "So, when you talk to me about basic decency, I need you to think carefully about where that sentence should be directed." Derek said nothing. My mother tried a different approach. She moved toward me with her hands open, the softening gesture she used when she needed something to shift. "Nora, honey, you know your sister loves you. This is just nerves and new relationship dynamics and everything getting tangled. You don't really want to take this from her." "I'm not taking anything from her," I said. "She has 11 days to find a new space. She has 11 days to find a new space. She has industry connections. She has a partner who apparently has strong opinions about who should and shouldn't be in the room." I glanced at Derek briefly. Maybe he can co-sign. The silence that followed was the kind that happens when people realize they have no more moves. My sister had not looked up from the floor in several minutes. When she finally spoke, her voice was very small. "I didn't think it would matter this much to you." That sentence stayed in the room after she said it. "What did you think would happen?" I asked, not unkindly. She shook her head. "No answer. Every time I showed up for you," I said slowly, "you told yourself a version of the story where I was just doing what I do. Being steady, being the strong one, not really needing anything back. And I let you believe that because I kept showing up the same way every time." I exhaled. "But I'm not doing that anymore. Not because I want to hurt you, because I finally understand that it was hurting me." My mother made a sound that was the beginning of something. I looked at her. "Please leave," I said. "All three of you." My mother stood there, sorting through responses, weighing them, trying to find the one that would reroute this back to the shape she needed it to take. She didn't find it. They left. My sister last, moving slowly, one hand trailing the back of the armchair as she passed it. At the door she stopped without turning around. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know that's not enough right now." I didn't answer. She pulled the door closed behind her. The weeks that followed were strange in a way I hadn't anticipated. Loud from the outside. My mother called every day for 2 weeks. My aunt got involved at some point. There was a family group chat I muted and eventually left, but very quiet on the inside. My apartment felt different. Not empty, just mine. I had been carrying a particular kind of tension for so long that I had stopped noticing it was there, the way you stop noticing a sound that runs under everything. Now it was gone, and the absence was so noticeable it almost felt like something new had moved in. My sister found a different kitchen. Smaller, less well-equipped, further from the neighborhood she had wanted, and she opened 2 weeks later than planned. From what I understand, it went reasonably well. She has a gift? That was never the question. I started seeing a therapist for the first time in years. Not because I was falling apart. I wasn't, because I had just made the hardest decision of my adult life, and I wanted to understand it with someone who had no stake in the outcome. Her office had plants everywhere, and she made notes in a small green notebook, and she asked questions that made me feel like the shape of my own life was finally becoming legible to me. I talked about my sister. I talked about my mother. I talked about the 9-year-old who packed her own lunch and the 24-year-old who said yes before the question was fully finished. I talked about what it had taken to finally do the thing I should have done much earlier, which was choose myself without needing an injury large enough to justify it. About 6 weeks later, my sister sent a letter, paper, handwritten, which was the last thing I expected from her. It wasn't long. She said she had spent years letting me carry things that weren't mine to carry. She said she hadn't understood the weight of it until it was gone. She said she wasn't asking for anything. Not the kitchen, not the money, not a conversation, unless I wanted one. She said she was sorry she had made me feel like the practical answer to a problem instead of a person she loved. I read it twice and put it in the folder with the lease documents, not to keep score. Just to keep some things need to be handled before they can be healed. I wasn't rushing toward forgiveness because forgiveness isn't a finish line, it's a direction. I was pointed that way. I just needed to walk at my own pace for a while. What I knew for certain, standing at my kitchen window on a gray Portland morning with coffee that was actually hot this time, was something I had never fully believed before, that my presence in someone's life is not a service I provide, that my steadiness is not a resource to be drawn from without limit, that when someone asks you to disappear from a night they could not have built without you, the answer is not to disappear, it's to let the night go instead. My name was on that lease, and for the first time in as long as I could remember, I used something with my name on it entirely for myself. If you've ever been the one who holds everything together and still gets left outside the door, I want to hear your story in the comments. And if this hits somewhere real, subscribe, because next week we're going back in.